So what I'm about to tell you is not really up my alley. Nevertheless, I found it way too interesting to let it aside. So in the following, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Canaanite languages, as well as about an extraordinary find from a couple of months ago, but I only found out about it yesterday. That's why I think it's all the more important that I share with you what I found out. So let's talk a little bit about the Canaanite languages. This group of languages includes Ammonite, Canaanite, Edomite, Hebrew, Moabite, Phoenician, and together they form the Arameo-Canaanite subgroup of northwestern Semitic. As a family, the Canaanite languages are attested from roughly 1360 BCE to 400. The Canaanite languages were originally attested in what is today Israel, so Hebrew in Western Jordan, Ammonite, as well as the language of the inscription at Deir Allah, Edomite and Moabite, the coast of Lebanon, Phoenician. Beginning around 1000 BCE, we have the famous Phoenician seafarers, traders, and colonists who spread their language across the Mediterranean basin to sites as far as Cyprus, North Africa, and Spain. With the exception of Phoenician, speakers of Canaanite languages never wielded so much political power. That's why their languages only assumed a limited regional importance. In contrast to this, Phoenician was the language of the Carthaginian Empire and continued to serve as a lingua franca in North Africa, also after the fall of Carthage in 146 BC. The texts in the Canaanite languages represent a variety of genres, for example, monumental dedicatory inscriptions, as well as epitaphs, narratives, letters, financial documents. Examples include Edomite attested in a single late 7th or early 6th century BCE letter. We also have Moabite, known primarily from 9th century BCE, monumental inscriptions, possibly a legal document. Texts in Ammonite span the 9th to 6th centuries BCE, include monumental inscriptions, 2 of them, several financial documents, a letter, and an inscribed bronze bottle. There is also a Canaanite variant used in Deir Allah in Jordan, recorded in a single narrative text from the 7th century BC, while Amarna Canaanite is only known through glossies and hybrid verbal forms employed in Akkadian letters sent to Egypt during the 14th century BCE. Texts in Phoenician also include votive and monumental inscription, epitaphs, and a passage in the Roman-era play Poenulus by Plautus. So pretty interesting. The earliest Phoenician inscriptions stem from the late 11th or the early 10th century BCE, and Byblos, more exactly, and are written in the Biblian dialect, which differs in several ways from the standard Phoenician. Actually, Phoenician is the only Canaanite language about which we can say that it really developed dialects. There are some innovative features distinguishing the whole group of Canaanite languages from Aramaic and the rest of Northwest Semitic more generally. These include, for example, the shift of A to O, which triggered the shift of the first singular independent pronoun, for example, from anako to anokim. Then we have the suffix to T as a development, as well as the generalization of nu as the first person plural suffix to nominative and oblique positions. Anyway, let's not get into too much detail regarding morphology. It suffices to say that it is difficult to figure out the changes shared by all these languages, or some changes which are specific to one language and not the others. One reason being that most of these languages are recorded in a purely consonantal script, which makes it difficult to detect morphosyntactic changes that affected only vowels, for example. And we should also add to that the inscriptions are actually not that many. All of the Canaanite languages are recorded in a variant of the Phoenician alphabet. That's a script that first emerged in the late 11th or early 10th century BC. Over time, the Phoenician alphabet gave rise to daughter scripts such as Old Hebrew in the 9th century and Aramaic in the late 8th century BCE. The Aramaic script, in turn, gave rise to the Transjordian scripts used to write Ammonite and Edomite. That's not to say that every Canaanite language developed its own script. The Phoenician script and its descendants originally distinguished 22 consonantal letters but lacked a way to mark vowels, like I said before. So starting around 900 BCE, we do have 3 letters, however, that were co-opted to denote word final long vowels in the Aramaic and Old Hebrew scripts. So letter like H marked the final A, for example, and O. A letter like Y marked the final I, and a letter like W marked the final U. Over time, the letters there were letters that were also used to mark internal long vowels. The Phoenician script remained purely consonantal until the 3rd century BCE, when there was a sign which looks like a question mark that was sporadically used to represent any final vowel, and then something looking like a Y coming to represent the final A. Later, still in the 2nd century BCE, we also have some letters looking like question marks or H's that were co-opted. It must have looked quite bizarre because we basically have non-etymological consonants marking vowels. Also interesting to note the fact that the punic language was written in Greek letters after the fall of Carthage. That was an option at any rate. Now that we have this context in mind, last year there was an extraordinary discovery, which was an ivory comb bearing 14 teeth for lice and 6 bigger teeth for hair tangles. It is crafted of elephant ivory, likely imported from Egypt, and the comb would have been a prestige object owned by a wealthy family. It is believed to have been made around 1700 BCE to 1550. So basically proto-Canaanite. It's a very archaic form of Canaanite, the inscription on the comb. So the comb seems to bear the oldest known sentence written in the earliest alphabet. The inscription on the luxury item reads, "May this tusk root out the lice of the hair and the beard." It was unearthed in Lachish, a Canaanite state in the 2nd millennium BCE and the 2nd most important city in the Kingdom of Judah. It's a simple sentence that captures the hopes and fears of both the Bronze Age Canaanites and modern day people, with the difference that Bronze Age Canaanites would have resorted to the magical power of the written word to fend off enemies such as lice. When researchers examined this comb under a microscope, they identified the outer membranes of 0.5 millimeter long nymph stages of head lice, which actually confirmed the purpose of the object. The letters of the comb spell out 7 words that form the first completely deciphered sentence in a Canaanite dialect written in Canaanite script, or at least this is what the researchers discovered, who also wrote an article for the Jerusalem Journal of Archaeology. Noteworthy is the presence of a Semitic letter, the sibilant S. It is a letter that disappeared in most North Semitic languages shortly after the invention of the alphabet. Those languages where the sound was preserved, like Hebrew, did not represent it with a separate letter, but using the letter shin to represent both sounds, sh and s. The presence of the letter, along with other paleographic clues, indicate that the script was used quite early in the development of the alphabet. Now, Lachish, the site of this very old written Canaanite sentence, is an especially interesting site a major Canaanite city in the second millennium BCE. Excavations here also revealed at least 10 Proto-Canaanite inscriptions, much more than any other site in Israel. Clearly, the site was a major center for the development and preservation of the alphabet between its invention and the end of the late Bronze Age, so about 1200 BCE. And the site has also supplied Hebrew texts dating back to the Iron Age, so between 1200 and 600 BC. The comb was probably commissioned by a wealthy family because, who would have had the money to commission a scribe to write an inscription on a hairbrush? The high caliber of the script and orthography indicate the fact that it was found it was written by a trained professional scribe. The fact that it was found at a strategic military site, and of course that it was written on a prestige object. Now, while clusters of Canaanite letters have been found on pottery shards and arrowheads, among other things, this discovery marks the first complete written sentence in the language. The dating is not really secure because for the dating, means of comparison with other artifacts were used, which makes the exact date still unknown, also due to its discovery in a secondary deposit, and then again, we don't really have that many artifacts to compare it with. Anyway, what the Canaanites developed actually became the foundation for ancient Greek and Latin writing systems, and this is very important to bear in mind. Nowadays, most of us can read and write using the alphabet system, so we can safely say that this is really one of the most important, essential intellectual achievements of humankind, and it would have been impossible without this great contribution of the Canaanites. Hope you enjoyed this short talk on a subject which is not particularly in my area of studies. Nevertheless, if you did enjoy the talk, please subscribe and follow me for much more, but rather related to the